Welcome to today's weekday reflection, and today I'm reading from Philippians chapter 1 verses 27 to 28. Whatever happens, conduct your lives in a manner worthy of the gospel of Christ. Then whether I come and see you or only hear about you in my absence, I will know that you stand firm in the one spirit, striving together as one for the faith of the gospel without being frightened in any way by those who oppose you. This is a sign to them that they will be destroyed, but you will be saved. During the French colonial rule of Indochina, one of the ways people were able to distinguish between Laotians and Vietnamese was by their lifestyles. Those who ate short-grained rice, built their houses on stilts and decorated them with Indian-styled serpents were considered Laotians, while those who ate long-grained rice and built their houses on the ground and decorated them with Chinese-style dragons were considered Vietnamese. In other words, they didn't require boundaries or borders to be able to distinguish them, because they were distinguished by their culture and the values that they upheld. Even though a Laotian may have been living in what is today modern-day Vietnam, or a Vietnamese person was living in what today is modern-day Laos, they were distinguishable by their lifestyles. Their identity was determined by their value and their culture. In Philippians chapter 3 verse 20, Paul tells us that even though as Christians we live in this world, we are not citizens of this world, but citizens of heaven, and therefore distinctive from the rest of the world. We live alongside everyone else, but we should be distinguishable from those around us because we are displaying kingdom of God values. As Christians, we live in the realm of this world, but our identity is found elsewhere. We profess an identity and a citizenship not according to where we live, but according to the values and the beliefs that we uphold. In the Lord's Prayer, it says, "Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven." And those words, "thy will be done on earth as in heaven," are fulfilled every time we choose to honour God in the way we live and the decisions that we make. Jesus said, "You'll know a tree by the fruit that it bears." You will know what sort of person someone is by the way they live and the way they behave, by the values that they uphold. And as Christians, we will be known by the way in which we live, whether we actually feed the hungry, whether we show compassion and mercy on the sick, lonely, and outcast, whether we stand alongside the grieving, whether our hearts are pure, whether we are peacemakers or not. Today, the way you live is testimony to the presence or not of God in your life. It's testimony to the sort of person that you are. In Philippians chapter 1 verse 27, which we read at the beginning, conduct yourselves in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so the question is, are you conducting your lives in a way that is worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ? And Paul then goes on to say, so whether he is able to come and be with them in person, or whether he simply hears about them, doesn't matter. Because if they're conducting their lives in a way which is honouring of the gospel of Jesus Christ, he will hear about it. So do people look at you and see Christ within you? Do they see the distinctive marks of someone who is a Christian, a follower of Jesus? Before William McKinley became President of the United States, he was travelling one morning to his congressional office in what Americans call a streetcar. We would refer to it as a tram. And back in those days, it would have been horse-drawn. And McKinley later wrote that on this particular morning, an elderly lady who looked fairly ill, got on board the streetcar and couldn't find a seat, and so grabbed hold of one of the overhead straps. And McKinley wrote that one of his congressional colleagues sitting next to him began to raise his newspaper so as to avoid making eye contact with this elderly woman, and so as to avoid having to offer her his seat. McKinley immediately rose and gave the woman his seat and took his place in the aisle on the streetcar. Years later, when McKinley became President of the United States, that same congressman was recommended to McKinley to become an ambassador for the United States. And McKinley refused that appointment, saying, if his kindness is of the quality he showed on the streetcar that morning, then I fear the damage that he may do representing us in a foreign country. If his kindness is of the quality he showed on the streetcar that morning, I fear the damage he will do representing us in a foreign country. What damage do we do representing Christ if we're not living out kingdom values? Well, the interesting thing about the McKinley story is that congressman never did discover why McKinley overlooked him for someone else to be ambassador. But you can be sure that you are being watched, not only by others, but by God, to see if indeed you are living according to the values of someone who is a member of the kingdom of God. Whether you are living and conducting your lives in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Mother Teresa once said, you cannot always do great deeds, but you can do small deeds with great love. You can always do great deeds, but you can do small deeds with great love. May today you take every little opportunity that passes your way to reflect the kingdom of heaven values within your life, to live your life in a manner worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ by doing little deeds with great love. Well, thanks for joining me today for our weekday reflection. I look forward to having you join us again for another weekday reflection later in the week.